In 1977, Marvel Comics began publishing a title called What If? The stories took place in an alternate reality outside the mainstream Marvel universe. The first issue was entitled, What If Spider-Man Joined the Fantastic Four? As far as I can tell, the most significant change to the world would have been to uniform numerals of the supergroup, as the Fantastic Four would now be the Fabulous Five. What If was a goofy comic that never really gained a lot of traction. I think that's because comic books by definition already exist as speculative fiction, so to have a title that further speculates on an already speculative premise, well, that's just downright dumb, even by comic book standards. In any event, I was thinking of What If the other day when I came across Bernie Farber's recent piece of speculative fiction, column, in Now magazine, Toronto's weekly newspaper for social justice warriors. Oh, by the way, Now magazine is obsessed with race and identity politics, even though it makes a sizable chunk of its revenue by running racist ads for sex services, but I digress. Farber, meanwhile, is the former head of the Canadian Jewish Congress and a failed Ontario Liberal Party candidate. He now heads up something called the Mosaic Institute, which is self-billed as a think tank that creates platforms for learning and dialogue among diverse Canadians to advance justice, promote peace, and reduce conflict. Yeah, my spidey senses are tingling over that descriptor too. Now, if Farber's name rings a bell, it might be because I discussed a previous way out there Farber column last November, when he wrote that America's Jewish and Muslim communities are now embracing one another. The reason for this alleged Jewish-Muslim love fest? Well, it's all due to the election of Donald Trump and the impending white lash that's going to erupt any day now, maybe. But in his current column, Farber truly outdoes himself in the department of speculative fiction. Essentially, Farber lambastes those parents who picketed in front of John Fraser Secondary School in Mississauga, Ontario. According to Farber, these parents were, quote, hurling bigoted statements at Muslim children and their parents over the school's accommodation of Muslim prayer. Protesters wore T-shirts proclaiming Stop Islam, Save Humanity, and engaged in Islamophobic vitriol, claiming Islam was engaged in pedophilia, rape, culture violence, and barbarity. Farber further laments that Peel police incomprehensibly stood by even as the bully spat verbal abuse. They contend there was nothing said that contravened anti-hate laws. But then Farber ventures into the realm of the super hypothetical. He writes that just suppose in the not too distant future, Orthodox Jewish children whose parents cannot afford to send them to private Jewish day schools decide to have them educated in Ontario public schools. Farber contends that the schools would have to accommodate the children's religious beliefs, and part of that might be the use of a prayer room for morning and afternoon services. Schools in areas with large Jewish populations might have to alter the school day or close entirely for Jewish holidays. Other accommodations might include provisions for kosher food and early closing on Friday prior to the beginning of the Sabbath. And all of these accommodations would be protected under Ontario human rights mandates. Thus, Farber concludes, how long do you think it would take before the same bigots that are attacking Islamic accommodation in Peel turn their attention to Jewish accommodation in public schools in, say, Thornhill? But there's a fatal flaw in Farber's argument, and it's this. What he's pondering is pure conjecture. I've never heard of any Jewish groups or any Jewish individuals fighting for so-called Jewish prayer accommodation in public schools. And for this reason, Farber's column really belongs in a giant-sized issue of What If? In the meantime, Farber labels those parents protesting Muslim prayer accommodation as bigots and bullies who would spew hate. And get this, for exercising their freedom of speech, Farber would actually like to see such people removed from school property and, when necessary, charged under Canada's anti-hate laws. Wow, maybe Farber needs to don a pair of tights and a cape and go round up these so-called bigots himself. Hey, he could even form his own supergroup of like-minded supposed do-gooders. How does the Mighty Revengers sound? For the Rebel.media, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Like what you just saw? Then click subscribe below and never miss another Rebel video.